Hey folks, we're going to get to the review in just a minute, but I have a request. If you are new to the channel, or if you're an existing subscriber, whatever the case may be, I would like your help. We're going to be trying something a little bit new here for this review, and a couple of other reviews are going to be going up at the same time, where I'm trying to cut back on the length of the video as a whole, but especially on the overview section. So for these videos at least, the overview as you knew it before is gone. Instead, I'm just going to give you a brief description of the game with some images of the game that I shot, just to keep it as brief as possible, to give you a taste for the game, and then to get back to my final thoughts as usual. So the intro and the outro are going to be mostly the same as you've seen in other reviews, but that middle section is going to be quite a bit different, and I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments if you like it, if you hate it, if you like some parts of it but you don't like other parts of it. I expect that this will be a process, and I want to involve you guys and gals in the process as much as I possibly can. So take a look. I hope you enjoy the review, and I hope that you give me as much feedback as you possibly can. Thank you so much for your support. Let's get to it. Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at Carnival Zombie from the company Alde Pavo. Now this game has actually been out for a couple of years, but I finally wanted to get around to it, and I think that they are actually funding a new Kickstarter for a new edition of the game. That's the same game fundamentally, if I can even speak, with better components. So I felt this was the time to take a look at it. Now this is yet another zombie game. Of course, it's right there in the title, but I think, as you'll see in a moment, this is dramatically different from many other zombie games that are out there, not the least of which is because of the theme. This takes place in Venice in a kind of undetermined time period, but during Carnival, and the city is being overcome by zombies. Not just any zombies, these are like zombies infected with a Cthulhu curse or some weird stuff. There's actually a giant Leviathan that's kind of like Cthulhu, who's awakening underneath the city and is going to destroy everything with his hordes of monsters. You and the other players are, I guess you were just partygoers, but you're like highly trained partygoers, and in costume and everything, but you need to escape from the city. There's different ways that you can escape, but it's going to take some time to get there. So you have to go through days and nights where you're traveling by day, fending off and barricading yourselves and fending off hordes of zombies at night. There's boss monsters, lots of different stuff. It's actually one of the heaviest zombie games I've ever played. Let me give you a brief look at some of the stuff that's in the game. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. Carnival Zombie is a fully cooperative game for 1 to 6 players. Now, if you play with less than 6 players, you still have to take control of 6 characters total, so some players are going to be doing double or even triple duty. You are in Carnival in Italy, and the entire city of Venice has been taken over by this giant Cthulhu monster and his zombie hordes. The goal of the game is for you and the other players to work together to escape the city alive. There's actually 4 different ending scenarios. One of them is to escape the city via boat, one of them is to escape via airship, one is to escape via the bridge on the outskirts of the city, and if any of those options fail, or you're just suicidal, you can go for the final battle. This is an end-all be-all battle with the giant Leviathan Cthulhu monster. In order to do this, you need the Holy Hand Grenade. At the start of the game, you'll set your difficulty, which can go up to hard, which I do not recommend, and everyone's going to take control of their characters. You have such wonderfully named characters as Captain Terror and Lady Columbine, and of course they all have their own special abilities. Lady Columbine, for example, is a sniper and is adept at shooting past the front rank in front of her, which most characters cannot do with ranged weapons, whereas Captain Terror is sort of the boss. He makes all the decisions of the group whenever there's people can't come to a decision, and he also has order tokens to boss people around and give them special abilities. One important note I'll say up front is that there's a special deck of cards called the Nightmare deck. The Nightmare deck is basically the deterministic set of cards for when you need to determine something randomly. When an effect pertains to a particular character, you'll flip over a card and look at the box that will have a certain character's face in it. If you need to determine where a certain boss or some zombies will come out on the board, you'll look at one of the letters and numbers on the card. During the day phase, you'll have a special event that will take place. That's what you look at for that. When you're searching during the day, you'll look at the icons in the bottom and see what you find, whether it's a survivor or whether you just find the item you're looking for, and so on. Now the whole game is broken down into a night phase and a day phase, both of which are like completely separate games that are pretty complex. The night phase is where you're going to start, and it's where all the action happens. You and the other players are trying to escape from the city, but when nighttime comes, the zombies come out of the woodwork and are trying to kill you. So you need to find a safe place. You barricade up by literally putting cubes in different sectors of the board around the center where you and the other players are going to cluster, and try to hold out and survive through the entire night, through the 4 different rounds or 4 different phases of the night phase. Players have one action during this phase of the game, and they'll be using that primarily to take ranged attacks against faraway enemies or melee attacks against those enemies who have gotten up past the barricades by destroying them. Now, players only get the one action, but they can take a stress in order to take another action. But this is also an indicator of the damage that characters are taking as well, and if you take too much damage, you might become incapacitated, which is bad for everyone, or you might just start freaking out and make everyone really scared and stress them out. Now, zombies come into the city in the form of cubes out of a bag called the Abyss. There's multiple different types of normal zombies. They have different types of stats, like the zombie dogs are very fast and move up quickly, whereas the purple zombies are more deadly in combat, and some of them are just really harder to kill, like the fatty zombies. They'll be spread out in the different wedges and caves of the board. There's different terminology in the game, and they'll be moving up forward. There might also be structures that impede the progress of the heroes. They might make it easier, like for instance catacombs that make it so that zombies might be able to sneak up behind your barricades. Even worse, you might think that just destroying the zombies with your various shotguns and sniper rifles is enough to put them down for good, but of course there's always a chance they'll come back. Whenever you kill regular zombies with a single action, you have to take all the cubes that you killed and drop them onto the pile of corpses, which is a separate tile that you're going to be dropping the zombies on from a certain distance above. You choose what the distance is, but you have to at least drop them from some kind of height in order for it to count. Now, in the beginning, this isn't so bad, but as the corpses begin to pile up higher and higher, it's going to be more difficult to drop corpses onto the pile without them falling off of the side. And if they fall off the side, whatever cubes fall off have to be put back out onto the map. Another nasty thing that will come out are boss zombies. Boss zombies, these will come out in certain arrangements depending on the difficulty level of the game, are much more vicious zombies with different special abilities, like dealing incredible amounts of damage or being able to withstand a ton of damage, bringing out more zombies with them, or being able to do ranged attacks from afar. They have their own special wooden pieces, which are just like cones and cylinders, but they can give you bonus cards if you're actually able to defeat them. We'll talk about those cards in a minute. Also potentially in the bag are paranoia cubes. If paranoia cubes come out, they're going to come out onto the player's tokens on the stress track and prevent them from using extra stress in order to use extra actions. Things like stress and the paranoia cubes can be taken away by the doctor and his special abilities. The other thing that might be in the bag are survivors, which are the blue cubes. And the blue cubes will come out into the city, and if you can clear out an entire cave of zombies before the end of the night phase, you'll rescue those survivors, and the purpose of them is to give bonuses to the doctor. Now, assuming you can make it through the entire night phase, then you get through to the day phase. This is where you can spend hours of time in order to perform different actions. Now, there's a whole separate minigame involved with the day phase, where some of that time that you spend in different phases can be used to move around the city, and this is the goal. You have to escape from the city by moving to one of the different areas on the board that's going to enable you to perform one of the end game functions. In the meantime, you can also be doing things like spending your time to draw more cards from your deck by doing the search action. You can also scout out structures that are actually beneficial instead of harmful to you during the night phase, like towers to shoot from. You can also build more barricades for the next night phase, because in the beginning of the game you only get a certain amount of barricades to build, and they don't just automatically spring back. You have to spend the time to build more, and they can save your life. You might also possibly spend special actions, Captain Terra has to do this, in order to complete one of the end game conditions. Now, assuming you don't meet one of the end game conditions right then and there, then wherever you end up, you're going to have to perform another night phase. And there's other mitigating circumstances for this, like parts of the city may sink depending on which events come out, forcing you to move along. But wherever you end up, you're going to have another night phase and have to survive the night again. Then you go back to the day phase and you can continue moving through the city. But let's say that you you were able to actually get to one of the end game points, the boat, the bridge, the airship, then you actually have a shot at beating the game. Now, if Captain Terror can complete a special action revolving around the boat and the airship, which is just like drawing cards from the Nightmare deck where you have to get a certain symbol, then you can actually have a special final nighttime battle in order to escape via one of those means. Same thing with the bridge, but you don't have to do the special action, but the bridge is farther away. When you get out to the bridge, you just have to make it across the bridge, and then again, a special nighttime battle that's incredibly difficult. Now, if you can't manage to do any of those things, you can have a final battle with the Leviathan. In order to do that, one of the characters in their deck of special bonus item cards has what I call the Holy Hands Grenade. This has no nighttime phase ability other than for this final battle. To do this, you need to initiate the final battle in San Pantaleon on the map, and you have to prime the Holy Hands Grenade throughout the course of the battle. So you have to survive this special night phase, which is incredibly difficult, and prime the Holy Hand Grenade through special actions as you go throughout the rest of this battle. If you can do that, you can chuck it at the boss and destroy it finally, and if at least one character is still alive, you all will have won the game. Now, that's a very brief description of what goes on during the game of Carnival Zombie. There's a lot of details to this game, but hopefully you got a good taste of what it's like. Now, let's get to my final thoughts. Component-wise, Carnival Zombie looks good. I like what they did with the art style, where they went for something that looked a bit different. It's kind of funky and weird and just a bit off because of the setting in Venice, and I think that it works well for this theme. The board looks a little cluttered. It's kind of hard. The first time you play, it's kind of hard to tell where everything is and how it should go. But for the most part, I think all the artwork and the graphic design works pretty well. As far as like the physical bits, a lot of people complain about the cubes in this game. Zombies being represented by cubes, and the bosses being represented by, cones and cylinders and things like that. But I think that there wasn't a great way to do that. There was no great solution to that if they wanted to make the game that they wanted to make. The whole system with the bag of putting the paranoia cubes in the bag and the survivor cubes in the bag, but still being able to pull out those cubes and put them out there, there's just not a great way to do that. Now, I don't know what they're going to do with the potentially new components and a new Kickstarter. I don't even know if it's going to affect the cubes at all. It might just be miniatures for the survivors, which would be fine. But yeah, I don't know how they could have gotten around that, and I think it works. It's functionally fine. If you just are against the idea of cubes in an Ameritrash game, I can understand that, but I was okay with what they did here. Now, the rule book is not great, and part of the reason for that is because this game is heavy. Now, I don't want to oversell that. This isn't like an uber heavy Roads and Boats type Euro or anything like that. But for the game that's about blowing zombies' heads off, this is super heavy. There's so many phases, so many things to keep track of, and special abilities for the player, special abilities for the zombies, cards that do different things that need explanation, very specific steps that you have to go through for the night phase, the day phase, how you can survive and escape, and the different plans that every method of you escaping is different. How you go about doing it, where you can do it. So there's tons of information in this game, and I don't feel like that's a problem in and of itself. But I don't feel like the rulebook does a great job of laying all that out. I mean, if you're going to have this kind of game where it is so complicated, I wish that the rulebook had done a better job of making it a simple, step-by-step, easy-to-find things. There's also some translation errors, like one of the copy of the rulebook that I have, one entire boss description is in Italian, so that doesn't help. I had to look that up online. So there's some issues. The rulebook was definitely not great. It was probably one of the most aggravating things about the game. Thematically, this is one of the most thematic games I've ever played, and definitely one of the most thematic zombie games I've ever played. Everything, because of how complicated the game is, the saving grace of that is that it is tied directly and tightly with that theme. It's nighttime. We got to get the barricades up. All right, we hole up there. Zombies are coming from all sides. They're up on the barricades. We got to fight them off with our melee weapons. Okay, we made it through another night. Now we got to travel through the city. We got to travel down these certain roads. Some parts of the city get sunken by the giant leviathan that is waking up. There's different ways to escape. The airship and the boat. We can make our last stand. We have to make the holy hand grenade and blow up the zombie. We have to train during the day, but that takes hours of our time. Or we can make more barricades with our precious time. Everything is so thematic. I loved that about this game. And because of that, it adds more tension and stress to the game. People don't understand that it's not just pasting a theme onto a game. When you make a theme, or when you make a game, and you take the theme into account and do what you want to do mechanically, but also keep the theme in mind, it adds more tension and stress and fun to the game. Because now it's like, we've only got this much time. What do? We need barricades. We're going to be beset on all sides. We're going to have to deal with this many bosses. We can see them coming up. That might be the only unthematic thing, is like, how do you know the bosses that are coming up? But okay, or potentially coming up. But I mean, there's so many things that you have to worry about and take care of, and they feel not necessarily real, but they feel like a real threat within the course of the game. So, best part about the game is the theme and how it's integrated into the mechanics. And there's a lot of interesting little bits in the game. They keep the movement and the actions during the night phase very simple. You move, you get your action, you can move, you can attack. Some people are better at melee, some people are better at range. It feels fully cooperative because you can't always worry about what every other player is doing. At a certain point, you have to say, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm going to do. We can work together and consult, but I have to do what's best for my wedge of the board. That's another confusing thing, too, that the rulebook doesn't explain well. It's like you've got wedges and caves, and I wish they had kept the terminology a bit easier, but that's a whole other thing. But I like the idea of, you can build the barricades, you can find different structures, you have one player who's really good at scouting. Everyone just feels like they have their own role and thing to do, and you do have to play with every character no matter how many players you have, unfortunately. That's a downside. But by doing so, it does encourage there to be a lot of variety in the gameplay. And if you're playing a particular character, you know that you're doing something that the other players aren't, especially if you're like the Doctor or Captain Terror, who is bossing everyone around, or the sniper lady who has got a horribly offensive name, Lady Columbine. I'm sure they didn't plan that. Maybe they did. But I thought that all of that worked very, very well. The day phase is very interesting in how you have to plan out all of your actions and decide what's going to be best for you. I wish that it was easier to upgrade your characters. Because it's not just like, oh, you have to spend time to go into your deck or use special abilities or kill a boss, which is cool that you get rewarded for that. But it's like you only get to draw one card, and that card may be worthless to you in a particular situation. There are definitely some cards that are better than others. If you don't get the cards you were hoping for, it takes so much precious time to go again, and you have multiple party members to worry about. So I wish that was a bit better, that you could be empowered, because the difficulty of the game keeps escalating. But it is very difficult, and I feel like the player's power doesn't escalate enough. I think you're going to lose this game more than you win, for sure. And the biggest problem of the game, by far, is the length. This game is super long. And the worst part about it is that it's a variable length, because the only time, God help you if you're going to go all the way to the end where you have to fight the monster, which we never even attempted, I'll just be honest and upfront about that, because that would probably take forever to even get to that point. But now trying to win via one of the other methods is only marginally easier and still takes a ton of time. And you don't know how long it's going to be, because if you fail, you only get a certain amount of attempts at, say, the airship or whatever, or the boat or whatever it might be, before you just run out of time during the day. And now it's like you have to go through another night phase and survive another night phase. And a single night phase is as long as like most of the games that I have on my shelf here. And then the day phase is only marginally shorter than that. So I wish that the time was managed better. So the end result of all of this is that, as fun as individual aspects of the game are, and it's really cool to be fighting giant bosses who all feel different and distinct, and it's cool that you've got these like superhero type zombie killing characters and all these thematic elements, it is a bear of a game to set up, to play over a very long period of time, to to bore through that rule book and to keep track of all the different phases. I wish there was individual player cards that reminded everyone of what the phases were. That would have helped as well. You have to like compartmentalize tasks like you do this, you're in charge of that, and you're in charge of putting cubes out, because there's so much to keep track of. Those things do really weigh down the game, but if you have a group that likes the theme, is able to sit down for a very long game like this, likes cooperative games, this is really, really cooperative, and I enjoy that about it, and likes all the little bits and all the different fun thematic things that you can do, I think it would be a hit. Because there's definitely, this is a meaty game, and I definitely like what they went for here. To really set itself apart from many of the other zombie games out there, which really feel like cookie cutter, this could be anything. This one feels distinctly like what it is. The theme is so tightly wound to the gameplay. So that is Carnival Zombie from Vale. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the name. I recommend it, but definitely check out the new edition when it comes out and see if they iron out some of those wrinkles. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.